Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's assembly. It's Miss Walsh here. Now, to start us off, I want us to think about the rainbow. You've probably seen them everywhere recently. You might even have one in your window to celebrate and thank the NHS for all the work they're doing over the course of the pandemic and beyond. The rainbow is a sign of hope and kindness, and it's also a symbol of pride. Pride is a celebration of identity and diversity within the LGBTQ+ community. And that's what this assembly is designed to do, especially through the lens of Pride London's campaign, You, Me, Us, We. The campaign calls on each of us to reach out and understand one another, to be better allies both within the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer plus community and beyond. Now, the reason for holding this assembly is because June is Pride Month. While usually this time would be filled with marches and concerts and celebrations, we can still celebrate and acknowledge this month together, even though we're apart. Because it's a time for the community and our allies to unite. The community spans cultures, nations, ethnicities, and belief systems, and anyone who identifies with the community belongs and is valid. While this is a chance to celebrate, it is also a time to remember the history of Pride. The first Pride was a riot, and we'll be thinking a bit more about that in a moment. It's also important to acknowledge that the community still faces prejudice and discrimination from different sources. Just over 50 years ago, it was illegal to be gay in England and Wales. So whilst progress has been made, attitudes can still linger and groups can still be targeted. This is especially true when a person's LGBTQ+ identity intersects with other forms of prejudice and discrimination. For example, Black trans women are one of the most marginalised groups of people in the world, despite all the contributions to society they make and have made, alongside, of course, their intrinsic right to live their lives. So, whether it's online or in real life, respecting, supporting and listening to trans voices can make a huge difference. Audre Lorde, self-described as Black lesbian mother, warrior, poet, expresses this idea far better than I ever could. There is no such thing as single-issue struggle, because we do not live single-issue lives. To continue to truly embody our core value of kindness, we need to stay accepting and inclusive by listening to people's experiences, recognising that they are valid. And while our experiences may differ, this does not mean our experiences are the only experiences. Our identities and personhoods are multi-layered, they're valid, and they can be complex and nuanced because people are complex and nuanced. So, to celebrate our diversity of identities, we're going to look at some public figures who openly identify as LGBTQ+. It's important to remember that coming out can be fantastic and empowering, but it is also an individual's choice. First of all, we have Jacqueline Wilson, celebrated children's author of The Story of Tracy Beaker and The Illustrated Mum. In April, she spoke publicly for the first time about being gay, and she's been living very happily with her partner Trish for the last 18 years. Lil Nas X, famous artist and singer, knew as a teenager that he was gay, and he said that he would just pray and pray that his sexuality would go away. But at the height of his fame with Old Town Road, and on the last day of Pride Month last year, he came out as gay on Twitter. Ian McKellen, world-famous actor. You may have seen him in The Lord of the Rings, the X-Men films, and also Richard III. In 1988, he came out as gay to the public in a BBC radio programme discussion about Section 28. Probably remember Section 28 from Mr. Woodley's assembly earlier in the year, and that was only fully repealed in 2003. We have Hafsa Qureshi, Stonewall's bi-role model of the year. She speaks about diversity and inclusion and about her experiences as a BAME LGBT Muslim woman with a disability. Laverne Cox, American actress and LGBTQ+ advocate, seen here on the cover of Time magazine. She's the first openly transgender person to be nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award in any acting category. We have Amandla Stenberg, star of films like The Hate U Give, The Hunger Games. They used they, them pronouns and came out as gay in 2018. They used their enormous platform to spark vital conversations about, but not limited to, cultural appropriation and LGBTQ+ acceptance. And lastly, but not least, we have Sam Smith, singer and songwriter. They identify as non-binary. In their words, I am not male or female. I think I flow somewhere in between. It's all on the spectrum. So, as LGBT+ people, especially those from marginalised communities, continue to come under attack from many sides, allyship is as important now as it has ever been. People experience life in different ways, and we can show each other kindness through listening to people's experiences and learning more, acknowledging their identities and accepting their truth. This kindness also applies to how you treat yourself and your thoughts. So, in the spirit of Pride Month, we're launching a competition based on the You, Me, Us, We campaign, and you can pause here to see the details. I also want to draw your attention to some amazing resources. Have a pause, have a read through, visit the sites if you wish. I'm going to pass you on now to Mr. Woodley. Thank you.
Hi Bridge Academy, I hope this finds you safe and well. Today I'm going to be telling you a little bit about Marsha P. Johnson. Who was Marsha? Marsha was born in America in 1945 and is one of the most important figures within the LGBTQ community for the work that she did in the 1960s all the way through to the 1990s in America. Marsha identified as a drag queen and used the pronouns she and her, and was the first drag queen to go inside a bar called the Stonewall Inn in New York. Marsha was there the night of the very iconic and important Stonewall riots, which took place on the 28th of June 1968, and she pushed for the start of the Gay Liberation Front. What were the Stonewall riots? Well, they happened at the Stonewall Inn in New York City, and there'd been a number of nights of unrest in the city with LGBTQ people feeling really frustrated by the police brutality that was taking place on the streets and in the bars. And that was the night at the Stonewall Inn that the people fought back, with lesbians and trans women of colour being some of the key people involved in that act of resistance, including Sylvia Riviera and Marsha P. Johnson. But how does Marsha impact us in the UK? Well, the Gay Liberation Front was the main organisation that came out of the riots and these wider movements, and they formed the first part of the original discussions to create Pride, which took place on the 28th of June 1970 in New York, which was a year after the Stonewall riots. Now, some of the UK activists involved in those movements in America came back to Britain and formed our own chapter of the Gay Liberation Front, leading us to have our own Pride rally, or what we now call Pride, a couple of years later in July 1972. Marsha's sudden and suspicious death. So on the 6th of July 1992, her body was found in the Hudson River in New York, with the police ruling it a suicide, and Marsha was only 46 at the time. Now, Marsha's death went largely unreported by the mainstream press, but many of her friends and fellow activists have always shared a disbelief about the ruling of suicide, and their feelings was that Marsha had been murdered, or potentially by hate crime or the mob or the mafia, but the police chose not to investigate this case any further. Now, there's a fantastic documentary, if you're year 10 or 15 and above, called The Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson, which is on Netflix, and I'd urge you to have a watch if you've got the time. But why am I talking to you about Marsha today? Well, I think it's so important that we think about that someone speaking out back in the 1960s that might be from a different country, that speaks differently to us, that might not look or sound like us, the rights that they have fought for have a huge impact on who we are and where we are today. So Marsha, her actions in the 1960s have given me my freedoms to be who I want to be and go to Pride in 2019. So the point I'm trying to make is Marsha fought for the rights of the LGBTQ community and the rights that we have today, and how important it is that we know our history. Final thing to say is that ways that we can celebrate Pride if we're not out and about. There are some fantastic books and films. Year 7, there's a book called Love, Simon, and Year 8 and 9, you might want to read Love, Simon as well, but there's a book called Queer Heroes, Queer There and Everywhere, and a great film called A Secret Love on Netflix, which is rated 12. And finally, you could learn a little bit more about Marsha P. Johnson. That's all from me. I hope you have a fantastic week, and if you're celebrating Pride, I hope you are safe and well and be proud. Take care. Bye.